Calvin came to pick me up by car. He had always been reserved and emotionally distant. Despite this, he allowed his new assistant to sit beside him in the front seat. It was in that moment I realized our marriage was beyond repair. On that day, Calvin drove to collect me. As I opened the passenger door, I hesitated for a split second. A young, attractive woman was seated there, smiling warmly. "Hello, sister-in-law," she greeted me courteously. However, she made no move to offer me her seat. I glanced over at Calvin, who was engrossed in a phone call, oblivious to the tension unfolding. We were supposed to attend an auction together, an event I had eagerly anticipated. I had dressed meticulously, only to discover someone else occupying the passenger seat. "Hello, sister-in-law. I'm Nicole, Mr. Hahn's new assistant." The woman introduced herself with a friendly smile, her dimples both charming and shallow. "I heard about the private auction tonight, so I asked Mr. Hahn if I could join to gain some experience. Don't worry, I won't interfere." My heart sank instantly. I knew Calvin too well. He had always been aloof and kept others at a distance. Our marriage had been arranged, and after careful consideration, we decided to be together. People often joked that I would end up living like a widow. But once our relationship was established, Calvin showed a tender side, his eyes softening when emotions arose. He would tell me, "You are my wife. We are one. You're different from anyone else." Yet today, something felt amiss. However, I am not a meek or submissive woman. I am Mary, someone who never hides her anger and always acts on her own terms. "Get out," I commanded coldly, showing no leniency. The girl was momentarily taken aback, not expecting me to openly challenge her dignity during our first encounter. Perhaps my tone was too severe. Nicole was briefly speechless. "Sorry, sister-in-law," she stammered, her voice shaky as she moved to the back seat. Calvin had just ended his call and noticed my frustration. A look of helplessness and indulgence crossed his face as he leaned over to buckle my seatbelt. Seeing that the seat had been adjusted, I quickly repositioned it, irritated by the disturbance. This is so frustrating. Who would dare to adjust my passenger seat? The car was thick with tension, and the girl remained silent, too frightened to speak. Calvin frowned slightly and suggested calmly, "If you're not feeling well, we can go home. She's just a new college graduate. There's no need to make a fuss." He then pulled me into his arms. For the first time in all these years, he seemed puzzled by my reaction. "This is the first time another woman has been in your passenger seat." Calvin didn't realize that this was exactly what was bothering me. Everyone knew how exceptional Calvin was. Many women admired him, yet he remained untouched despite the attention. He gently ruffled my hair and smiled faintly. "Who knew I could make you jealous?" He leaned in to kiss me, his nose brushing my cheek. "She's just my assistant, nothing more. There will never be anything between us." Calvin held my face, gazing into my eyes, giving me his solemn vow. A woman's intuition is rarely wrong. Even though I had only met Nicole once, I sensed she had ulterior motives regarding Calvin. I believed a stern warning during our first meeting would suffice. However, I never anticipated that the necklace intended for me from the auction would end up around her neck the following day. Ava, Calvin's chief assistant, sent me a photo and a social media screenshot. In the picture, the crescent diamond necklace adorned Nicole's delicate neck, enhancing her charm. Her eyes were red and puffy, but a smile lingered on her lips, suggesting she had cried herself to sleep and perhaps received a gift in return. The screenshot showed Nicole posting, "The chairman says a woman must stay strong even when wronged. Wipe away the tears. I will obey, my dear chairman," accompanied by playful fist-pumping emojis and a picture of the necklace in its box. At that moment, my blood ran cold. Though it was difficult to accept, I had to acknowledge the reality. I was so enraged that I nearly lost control. It felt unbearable, like seeing a cherished white handkerchief tainted with mosquito blood. The feeling was strange to me. I even contemplated jumping into my yellow Ferrari and slapping that woman. But then I looked at my hands and realized that targeting a superficial coquette was beneath me. Instead, I called Laura from Hermes. Laura's voice was brimming with barely contained excitement over the phone. She assured me, "Don't worry, Mrs. Han. Even if we have to empty all of Shanghai, I'll ensure you get everything you desire." That day, by the end of the workday, all 46 assistants and office girls at Han Group's headquarters, except Nicole, received an extravagant gift from the chairman's wife, a Hermes necklace worth 120,000 yuan each. While each piece wasn't as valuable as the 2 million yuan auction necklace, there were many, and the gesture was equitable. Ava managed the situation adeptly, instructing everyone to post on social media with the caption, "The chairman's wife believes every woman deserves the best. Clench your fists. I will obey, my dear chairman's wife," along with cute fist-pumping emojis and a picture of the necklace in its box. Naturally, the recipients were happy to comply. As assistants and office staff, they were the company's gossip hub. Now that they had received gifts from the chairman's wife, they were eager to share pictures and captions. Some clever ones even added, "The chairman's wife truly knows how to play the game." The influence of these assistants, while not significant within the company, was formidable in spreading information across departments. In less than 30 minutes, everyone in the company knew that the chairman's wife had gifted Hermes necklaces to all. As for the reasons, various gossip groups had already begun speculating. Nicole's face turned pale, clearly feeling humiliated. Her eyes welled up as she rushed to the restroom to remove the diamond necklace. Two colleagues touching up their makeup glanced at her and chuckled mockingly. Mortified, Nicole bowed her head and hurried out of the restroom, the mocking laughter growing louder behind her. Her cheeks flushed as she placed the necklace back in its box and returned it to Calvin just as it had been. Calvin had just finished a video call with his business partner when he noticed the girl who had clearly been crying again, holding the necklace box and staring sadly at the ground. "What's wrong?" Calvin asked, puzzled. Before she could respond, tears began to stream down Nicole's face. In a soft, pitiful voice, she said, "Mr. Han, please take this necklace back. I'm too scared to keep it." A faint look of displeasure crossed Calvin's usually stern face. His instincts told him that something was amiss, but he didn't confront her directly. Instead, he quietly observed her. Nicole bit her lip, hesitated for a long moment, and finally began to explain everything that had happened in the office that day. "Mr. Han, I'm sorry for always causing you trouble. I just posted on social media to encourage myself." "I have no idea how Mrs. Han discovered this," Nicole whispered, her voice trembling with tears. "I never thought she'd react so harshly." The woman appeared as vulnerable and sorrowful as a small, frightened rabbit. "Mr. Han, I need to apologize to her. I can explain everything face to face. Calvin never really used social media. His work kept him occupied. However, as the group's chairman, he understood how rumors could quickly circulate within the company," she continued, her usually stern expression turning even more severe. "I get it," he responded in a deep tone. That night, Calvin brought Nicole to our home. The young woman stood behind him, clearly anxious and uneasy. "I've brought Nicole here so she can clear things up personally," Calvin explained with a sigh. "Mary, Nicole is merely my secretary. After yesterday's incident, I gave her a gift as a simple apology. Nothing more." He stirred his spoon thoughtfully, finishing his bird's nest soup that Auntie had prepared. "I apologize, sister-in-law," Nicole said earnestly, bowing deeply. She was visibly shaking, her voice soft and frail. "This is the first time I've received such an extravagant gift, and I got carried away with excitement. If I did anything to upset you, please let me know, and I'll fix it right away." Calvin raised an eyebrow. Nicole looked at him, seemingly seeking his support, and slowly nodded. Watching her bravely yet naively attempt to confront me, I couldn't help but find it somewhat amusing. "I'm not your teacher or your employer, so I don't have the time to instruct you on proper behavior," I stated firmly. "However, as Calvin's wife, if anyone tries to get too close to him, I won't allow you to make amends." She likely had never met someone as direct as me before, and her increasingly embarrassed expression only highlighted her vulnerability. "Mary, Nicole is here to apologize to you." Calvin understood my nature and approach. Even if he disagreed with my actions today, he could empathize with my feelings. Therefore, he didn't argue, but agreed to let Nicole apologize, hoping I would move past the misunderstanding. We're all intelligent individuals. Sometimes a single look can convey our thoughts to one another. I understand. I've decided to give Calvin another chance. After all, he hasn't actually cheated, I said. But regardless of who it is, it won't happen again. You didn't need to go to such lengths with a girl. Calvin brought up the issue before bedtime. You should have told me first. I had been sitting at the vanity, brushing my hair and gazing at my reflection, admiring the handsome man in the mirror. You knew I loved that necklace, yet you gave it to another woman. It's only natural for me to be upset. I can't stand the idea of someone tarnishing this perfect man. I wonder if I could still love him as much. Calvin remained composed, moving to the bar to pour himself a glass of ice water. She cried all night because of the misunderstanding. In the morning, seeing her swollen eyes, I gave her the necklace as an apology. His reasoning was flawless. $2 million might be a small sum for us, so giving it away wasn't a big deal. It's just a matter of whether the recipient is deserving. Calvin's fingers tapped against the marble countertop, waiting for me to consider his words. This was the first time a third party had caused tension in our relationship. Our similar upbringings and values made us weary of such issues, as we both valued propriety. Calvin, I love you. He paused, his fingers still. He likely hadn't expected me to declare my feelings so suddenly. I love the pure and untainted you. That's what makes you different from others. You never let women get too close because you despise anything impure. You wanted a clean marriage. I wasn't like that before, but your values influenced me. Now, we share the same life goals. I hope our marriage never derails. Calvin sighed. I haven't. Calvin is incredibly clear-headed. He knew I was sensitive, so he didn't give Nicole any further chances to develop misconceptions. Without the chairman's backing, Nicole, as an intern, was limited to basic tasks. Previously, she had opportunities to work shifts at the front desk, but now Ava didn't even assign her to that. I hadn't instructed anyone to exclude her, trusting Calvin to set appropriate boundaries. In these matters, I didn't need to provide any directions. Many people are quick to take advantage of someone when they're vulnerable. Within just 2 weeks, this new secretary couldn't handle the workload disparity and the psychological stress, resulting in significant weight loss. The turning point occurred after an important high-level meeting. That day, Nicole was tasked with cleaning a small conference room alone. Dressed in a business suit, she knelt on the floor, struggling to remove gum from the carpet with a blade. Calvin, who had returned unexpectedly, witnessed this scene. Noticing someone behind her, Nicole panicked and stood up abruptly. Calvin's gaze was intense and icy. This silent judgment crushed Nicole's self-esteem. "Mr. Hahn?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't pretending or acting. Calvin had always been the admired figure she could never reach. Pushed aside, she was nearly ready to give up. But now, seeing herself exposed before the man she respected, Nicole just wanted to push Calvin away and run. In just 2 weeks, the once lively and cheerful girl had become so fragile. This was the first time Calvin had lost his temper. When he returned home, he angrily smashed the glass of water I had given him onto the floor, water splattering everywhere. "Why won't you leave her alone, Mary? I respect and love you, and I've tolerated your insults and mistreatment of her time and again. What satisfaction do you get from bullying someone weaker?" I remembered that during Calvin's time studying abroad, his younger sister had committed suicide by jumping off a building due to school bullying. This tragic event had left a permanent scar on his heart, making him detest such behavior. "Mary, don't let me see you use these tactics to harm others again, or I won't stand by silently." I stared blankly at the man before me, who was losing control. For the first time in our marriage, Calvin had lost his composure and lashed out at me over something I hadn't done. The pain was unbearable, like shattered glass or spilled water that couldn't be gathered again. Calvin promoted Nicole to his personal assistant while decisively firing Eva, the executive assistant who had worked with him for 7 years. "You need to understand who you're truly serving," he told Eva. She had always been stubborn in certain areas. "I'm working for you, Mr. Han," she responded. "There are some matters I handle privately with Mrs. Han." Calvin threw the work schedule in front of her. "Is that so? So noble. Does your professional ethics also lead you to mistreat others?" Ava was left speechless, realizing she had been caught making things difficult for Nicole, her face showing guilt. Calvin saw right through her. With no tolerance, unable to distinguish right from wrong, and using your position to oppress colleagues, what makes you fit to remain my executive assistant? Ava left the office defeated. Several assistants outside watched with concern. "Ava, are you really leaving?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "Yes, I'm leaving. Farewell, sisters." Calvin and I entered an unprecedented Cold War. He stayed at a hotel, and Nicole came to collect his clothes. When Calvin wants to make someone suffer, he's even more ruthless than I am. The housekeeper had already received instructions and neatly packed Calvin's essentials. Nicole, likely still intimidated by my demeanor, took the suitcase from the housekeeper and obediently took a cab. Before leaving, she cautiously said, "Ma'am, Mr. Han asked me to add you as a friend. If you need anything in the future, feel free to contact me." With Ava gone, Nicole had assumed her responsibilities. "There's nothing to discuss. Tell him to stay as far away as possible." Nicole couldn't grasp why I remained so stubborn, especially since Calvin was now staying at a hotel. Her eyes reflected both confusion and a hint of triumph. The housekeeper gently shook her head and offered some compassionate advice. "Madam, perhaps you should consider easing up a bit. Go and apologize to the master. You two never used to argue, so why has everything suddenly intensified?" The housekeeper had been with the Han family for over 10 years. Throughout that time, emotions had naturally developed. "He's expecting me to apologize, isn't he? That's absurd. Why should I say sorry?" Calvin never came back home, yet Nicole's social media was consistently active. Most of her posts detailed Calvin's schedule: a tailored evening gown for a prominent grandmother, an invite to a private equity event, fireworks at a summit conference, the night breeze at the Burj Al Arab, photos with the CEO of Capital, and more. Each post seemed to highlight how meeting influential people had enriched her life with new experiences. These updates received hundreds of likes, and some commenters even suggested she start a vlog to showcase the elite lifestyle. A few mutual friends sent me screenshots of her social media with puzzled expressions. Nowadays, if you want to know Mr. Han's whereabouts, just follow his secretary's social media. You'll get a clear idea. Everyone was clever enough to keep their comments subtle. In the past, I was usually the one accompanying Calvin to events. When I was busy or didn't want to attend, one of his assistants would take my place. Now, his regular female companion had changed. I didn't have the energy to respond to my friend's well-meaning reminders, so I simply sent a thank you emoji. During this time, I was secretly working with Bai's accounting firm to assist with dividing our assets. It was an enormous and intricate task. Because of our marriage, the two conglomerates held shares in each other. Additionally, there were family funds, various properties, metals, stocks, yachts, and countless other investments to manage. I even had to locate deeds and photos for some overseas properties to vaguely remember them. Organizing all of this was extremely time-consuming. One day, I received a call from Calvin, who had just returned from a business trip. "Mom wants us to have dinner at her place." "All right." We acted as if nothing was wrong, behaving normally. The driver first picked up Calvin from the airport, then me, and we drove together to the Gu residence. Calvin and Nicole sat in the back, leaving the front seat for me. Nicole's delight was obvious. I found my situation somewhat amusing in its absurdity. However, this time I didn't push back and calmly took the front seat. Calvin looked cold, and the tension around him was thick. "Sister-in-law, we just returned from Manhattan today. The old lady said she wanted to see Mr. Han, so I got some gifts and thought I'd accompany him to visit her." Nicole was as chatty as ever, but her demeanor had become more polished and sophisticated. It seemed her time shadowing Calvin had taught her a lot. I remained silent, closing my eyes to rest. Realizing she wasn't getting any engagement, Nicole quieted down. Calvin stayed silent, and the car ride remained quiet thereafter. When Han's mother met Nicole, she was somewhat taken aback. Nicole smoothly greeted and introduced herself, seemingly adept at flattery. Quickly, she had Han's mother laughing heartily. At the dinner table, Nicole began sharing funny stories about Calvin at work, earning Han's mother approving smiles. She then inquired about Calvin's personal life, and Nicole effortlessly steered the conversation. The mood at the table became noticeably tense. Nicole still smiled with her dimples, but suddenly seemed to realize she had overstepped in the strained atmosphere, understanding she wasn't entirely naive. Everyday matters were supposed to be my responsibility. Han's mother wasn't foolish. Calvin stayed silent. I neatly wiped my mouth with a napkin. "Mom, I'm expecting a baby." "Oh, really, Mary? That's wonderful news." Han's mother's eyes sparkled. "When did you find out?" The man, who had been silently brooding since entering the car, showed a rare emotion on his face. I raised an eyebrow with a hint of malicious joy. "I just learned yesterday. The doctor said it's been 3 weeks." Han's mother was thrilled and wanted to call Han's father to plan a hospital visit with me the next day. Nicole was stunned, her large almond eyes appearing so innocent and pure. "Sister-in-law, are you certain about the timing? Mr. Han and I have been abroad on business for the last 2 months. Han's mother's expression faltered at this statement. "There's no mistake. I consulted Professor Fang, a renowned obstetrician, and she confirmed it's been 3 weeks. I stressed 3 weeks. Calvin knew very well he hadn't been home during that period. This child wasn't his. The warmth on his face instantly disappeared. "Mary." A storm was brewing around Calvin, but he was desperately trying to control it, seemingly awaiting an explanation from me. My smile grew more triumphant. "Congratulations, Calvin. I'm going to be a mother." "Don't make jokes about this," he responded coldly. I placed the pregnancy test I had prepared before him. "Unfortunately, this is not a joke. While you were on a honeymoon with your lover, I was feeling lonely and had some fun with a few past flames. Now, I don't even know who the father is. If you don't mind, I could let the child call you Dad, but he would have to take my last name." With each word I spoke, Calvin's expression grew colder. "That's enough." When I said the last sentence, Calvin finally lost his composure. I ignored his anger. "Calvin, how does it feel to be deceived?" Calvin never expected that I would openly have an affair and then self-righteously declare to everyone that I was pregnant with another man's child. "I've never cheated on you," he replied, his hands clenching tightly, veins bulging. It seemed this revelation had truly shaken him. "We were just working together. We never crossed any boundaries. I've never been unfaithful." I touched my belly, no longer interested in his belated explanations. "Your secretary showcases your daily work life together on social media, Calvin. Haven't you noticed? Even our friends observed and warned me. Don't you think that counts as crossing the line? If you can take her out to stargaze and moonwatch, then I can discuss poetry and philosophy with other men." Calvin, rarely this angry, was furious. I, on the other hand, was indifferent. In fact, I felt somewhat regretful. "What a pity, Calvin. I didn't have time to bring a man home to Han Garden with me. Compared to your provocative behavior today, I'm still somewhat behind." Calvin couldn't accept it. He believed he and Nicole were innocent. Aside from work-related interactions, their contact was minimal. He merely wanted to use Nicole to stir things up around him. He couldn't fathom why everything had spiraled out of control like this. Before this, he had always thought our marriage was stable and happy. "Sister-in-law, Mr. Han and I are innocent." In front of Han's mother, Nicole was eager to defend herself. "Mrs. Han and I have spoken several times on the phone. For work purposes, I took this chance to visit. This is purely work for me. You might not understand since you've never had a job, but as the chairman's chief secretary, I have to be meticulous in everything. But Mr. Han and I have never crossed any lines." Nicole sat beside Calvin, her posture straight and confident. "Is that so? On the way here, you sat next to Calvin while the chairman's wife sat in the front. Did your thoroughness suddenly disappear?" I ruthlessly exposed her hypocrisy. Nicole was left speechless, unsure how to respond. And I didn't spare Calvin either. Calvin, is this the chief assistant you've been grooming for the past 2 months? Ava is also a woman, also your secretary. She's been with you since she graduated from university. Has she ever sat next to you? She's even more meticulous than Nicole. Have I ever targeted her? Once, Calvin's breathing quickened, and a red flush spread to the corners of his eyes. Let's get a divorce, Calvin. A man forcefully took me back to our home, leaving Nicole at the Hahn estate. It was his first return since our silent conflict began, and I had already emptied most of the house myself. Even the domestic staff had been let go. Calvin froze, astonished as the place we had inhabited for 3 years suddenly seemed alien to him. He finally understood that my mention of divorce was intentional. His eyes filled with red as disbelief washed over him, and he drew me tightly into his embrace. "Mary, I didn't cheat," he murmured, his voice heavy with sorrow. "You can discard the baby, and we can start anew," I replied sarcastically, feeling as though I was hearing a joke. "That's my child. Why should I abandon it?" My composed demeanor seemed to penetrate Calvin's heart. "I didn't do anything wrong, you know that." I broke free from his hold. "Yes, I know you're still innocent, but what's the use? You had Nicole come to our house to collect your suitcase, knowing it would upset me. You took her to every event, fully aware I'd be criticized. You did all this despite knowing her feelings for you. You allowed her provocations, letting me be humiliated and forcing me to reconcile. You despise me for mistreating the vulnerable, but Calvin, didn't you see how that so-called weakling kept provoking me?" Tears streamed down my face as I remembered everything, unable to fathom how fragile our marriage had become. "You knew she had feelings for you, didn't you?" "I warned you long ago, Calvin. Willful ignorance is more dangerous than not knowing at all." His body shook, his stance unsteady, and his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, Mary." She reminded me of Sophie, and I feared Calvin might turn into one of those monsters. Sophie Hahn, who also had 2 sweet dimples. "I just didn't want to see her cry," Calvin responded. "I never had any intentions regarding her." Seeing his remorse, I felt nothing inside. Perhaps he was innocent, but I wasn't willing to naively expose my vulnerabilities to someone who might harm me. Calvin refused to consent to a divorce. He hired a new high-level male executive assistant and even drank himself drunk in the wine cellar. It took all my strength to help him to the couch. He managed his drinking well, silent and compliant. But as I was about to leave, the man with red eyes grabbed me again, fragile and pleading. "Mary, let's not divorce, please. If you want the child, then take him." As for Nicole, a large corporation has its own regulations, and he couldn't dismiss someone without reason if they hadn't done anything wrong. However, the chairman's intentional distancing was clearly signaling something. The chairman's former personal assistant had seemingly overnight shifted from being admired by all to the subject of private mockery. When Nicole visited me, her youthful glow was gone, and no amount of makeup could conceal her exhaustion. "I saw you on my first day at the company," she began, catching me off guard. "That day, I brought you tea and waited by your side for your instructions. You and Mr. Hahn were discussing an appropriate wedding gift for a friend, and you never once looked at me." Her expression was mocking. For someone like Mr. Hahn, if it weren't for work, I would have never had the chance to know him. And you were just lucky to be born into a good family so you could marry him. At the auction, I told Mr. Hahn it was rude for the boss to sit in front while the employee sat behind. I said I'd switch once I saw you. Mr. Hahn didn't object. The girl seemed to reminisce about the pride she felt that day. I ordered coffee and dessert for her, just as I did for myself. My usual detachment seemed to irritate her, making her eyes red with anger and intensifying her hatred. "Someone like you, a spoiled rich kid, what right do you have to look down on me? You don't deserve Mr. Hahn's love. Is that so? Did you actually get it?" I watched calmly as she became flustered. Her youthful face struggled to maintain composure. "Isn't it because I threatened you? Otherwise, why would you be so upset and want a divorce?" I slowly stirred my coffee. "Because I cheated and became pregnant with another man's child. You know that already, don't you? You? Nicole stumbled over her words, her emotions on the verge of breaking. What's there to be proud of? You're a bad-tempered, jobless older woman who's carrying another man's child. Do you think Mr. Hans still wants you? Without hesitation, I slapped her sharply across the face. First of all, no matter how old I am, I'm still 2 years younger than your precious Mr. Han. Second, who do you think you are calling my child a bastard? And lastly, I've wanted to slap you for a long time, you fool. When I was 4 months pregnant, the Han family realized there was no turning back. Under pressure from Han Corporation, Calvin agreed to a peaceful divorce. The holdings between our families were extensive, and the strategic cooperation we had established was mutually beneficial, so our parents saw no need to change it. The division of premarital assets was clear, with neither side raising objections. I meticulously organized the post-marriage joint finances. Calvin signed the papers calmly, looking like a fallen crane from a once grand pedestal, his wings broken by his own actions, blood staining his once pure feathers. We divorced with dignity and bid each other farewell. When our baby was born, he took my last name, Bai. Outsiders thought he was premature, but he had excellent genes. My mother kept asking who the father was. I didn't tell her. The supposed one-night stand was a lie I concocted, but they didn't need to know that. Since he was a boy, my parents no longer pressured me to remarry. They decided to raise him as an heir while he was still young. As the child grew, he began to resemble his father more and more. Without the constraints of marriage, I spent the last few years living freely and indulgently. I had a few young and handsome boyfriends, and Eva and I occasionally chatted. From her, I heard some gossip. Nicole didn't last 6 months at her job and left on her own. But in this circle, everyone was well informed, and no major company would hire her. Over the past 2 years, Calvin became increasingly isolated and focused on his work. Every year at the shareholders' meeting, my father insisted I return to the country to represent him. I knew what my parents were thinking. It amused me, but I didn't bother to reveal it. After the meetings, Calvin would pull me into his car, saying we were on the way to visit my parents for the new year. Oscar loves Calvin. Someone had secretly told him that Calvin is his father. So when he sees Calvin, he wriggles his little body and calls out for his dad to pick him up. Calvin adores him and never refuses. Now that Oscar's features are becoming more distinct, how could Calvin not understand? During the new year, I stayed in the country to reunite with my family. Calvin canceled all his work to stay with us. He wanted to ask if we should remarry. I refused. Marriage should be either perfect or not at all. Otherwise, you're just inviting misery upon yourself. But whenever Oscar sees Calvin, he is visibly happier than usual. He insists on sitting between Calvin and me, calling out Mom on one side and Dad on the other, laughing foolishly the whole time. I tapped the back of his head, telling him not to call out randomly. Calvin's eyes reddened, and he seemed at a loss. He had 1,000 apologies he wanted to say to me, but I no longer needed them.